You are listening to Meet the Thriller Author, a podcast where I interview some of the most talented mystery and thriller writers out there. I'm your host, Alan Peterson, and this is episode number 193. In this episode of the podcast, we'll be meeting number one Amazon and USA Today bestselling author Freida McFadden. Freida is a medical doctor specializing in brain injury and also a prolific writer who has penned multiple Kindle best-selling psychological thrillers and medical humor novels. Her books have been recognized with honors such as selection as one of Amazon Editor's Best Books of the Year and a nomination for the Goodreads Choice Award. Her novels have been translated into over 30 languages, and in this episode, we'll be discussing her latest book, The Housemaid's Secret, which is a sequel to the international bestseller and one of my personal favorite thrillers of 2022, The Housemaid. The much anticipated sequel will be hitting the shelves on February 20th. I was able to get an advanced review copy of The Housemaid's Secret, and you won't be disappointed. I highly recommend you check out her latest thriller. Before we get to the interview, though, I'd like to tell you a little bit about this episode's sponsor, Masterclass. If you're looking to take your skills to the next level, then you need to check out Masterclass, the online education platform that provides access to tutorials and lectures pre-recorded by experts in their respective fields. With Masterclass, you can learn from world-renowned instructors like Neil Gaiman, Gordon Ramsay, Serena Williams, and many more, all from the comfort of your own home. Whether you're looking to improve your cooking, writing, or even your acting skills, Masterclass has you covered. Plus, your classes are available on demand, so you can learn at your own pace and at your own schedule. So don't miss out this incredible opportunity to learn from the best. Visit thrillingreads.com/masterclass and sign up for Masterclass today and take the first step toward mastering your craft. For show notes and access to more than 190 author interviews, please visit thrillingreads.com. And please take a moment to rate and review Meet the Thriller Author on your favorite podcast platform. This helps me reach more listeners. All right, here is my interview with Freida McFadden. Hey, everybody, this is Alan with Meet the Thriller Author. And on the podcast today, I have Freida McFadden, who's a number one Amazon and USA Today bestselling author. She's a practicing physician specializing in brain injury who's penned multiple Kindle best-selling psychological thrillers and medical humor novels. Her work has been selected as one of Amazon Editor's Best Books of the Year, and she's been a Goodreads Choice Award nominee, and her novels have been translated into over 30 languages. Her latest book, The Housemaid's Secret, which is a sequel to the international bestseller, one of my favorite thrillers of 2022, is The Housemaid, will be published on February 20th. I'm so excited you're here. Welcome to the podcast, Freida.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
To get things rolling here, could you tell us a little bit about your latest book and what inspired you to write it?
Yeah. So my latest is The Housemaid's Secret. It's a sequel to The Housemaid. And, The Housemaid just, it blew me away, the response from readers. It was so exciting. And I wasn't ready to leave those characters behind. Everybody wanted to know what's going to happen with Millie, what's next in her story. And, the end kind of left things open for that. So I got this idea and I'm like, I'm going to write this. And everyone was so excited about it. So I knew I had to do it. And I really wanted it to be a good experience with everyone. I mean, we've all read sequels that were kind of disappointing. So I wanted to make sure that it stayed true to the original and that people loved it just as much.
Yeah, that's kind of different for those psychological thrillers because usually those are like standalone. So it's really excited to see kind of like the series continuing with the same character.
Definitely. I mean, I have been hesitant to write sequels. Everybody's like, oh, write a sequel to this book or that book. But I kind of feel like it gives away the ending, just the existence of a sequel. So in general, I'm not excited to write them, but I felt like I could do this one just from Millie's point of view. And I think if you read this, it doesn't give away anything from the first book. I think you can actually read it as a standalone because it's just Millie's story. So I really tried hard to give that. And I don't know sequels, if there will be any more sequels in the future, but I thought I could make this happen. So we'll see.
Yeah, and I'm excited, and so that comes out February 20th. So that's coming right around the corner from where
That's
we're
right.
recording this.
Yeah, that's right. In the
Yeah.
past,
So
when people are listening,
yeah,
probably.
exactly. Yeah. By the time you listen to this, it's already out, so go get it. But I'm sure it's already for pre-order. So
That's right. That's right.
yeah, and so the success of this of the housemaid, and I've seen your name is like all over on the Amazon's top 100. Is that
Yeah.
surreal? How does that feel? I mean, for you.
It's so crazy. I mean, I've been writing books since I was 9 years old, and it was always just fun. And when I started self-publishing, it was all just, me having fun. Like, I love to write, and I just wanted to share what I was writing with everyone. And I never was aiming or intending for this to happen, but it is so exciting. Like it's so makes me so happy that so many people are enjoying my books. I mean, it's really like a dream. Like it's amazing.
And what was that like when you first started putting out publishing your books? I mean, did they just started like taking off, or did you like
Oh
market them? I'm just kind of curious.
no, it was not like that at all. It was a very slow trajectory. I published my first book in 2013, and I had this blog about being a doctor at the time. And my first book was about my residency and my internship specifically. And like, I had this senior resident who was so mean to me, and I wanted to write a book about it. So, and I was just like, I just want to tell this story. I didn't care about selling it. I was like, people from my blog will buy it. And I think I remember selling 500 copies the first few months. And I was so happy with that. I'm like, I've done it. I've published my book. I'm done. And then, of course, I got another idea. And then it just, it snowballed. And then when COVID hit, I think a lot of people know this. I think people started reading more. And all of a sudden, my books became much, much more popular, just pretty suddenly. And that was amazing. And for me, I'm just doing the same thing, doing what's fun, and I just feel lucky that people are reading it.
And so your characters, I think that's one of the reasons you enjoy your book so much is the characters are I mean they're so interesting and they're cool and so I was just kind of curious, how do you approach that process of creating characters for your novels?
So I'm glad to hear you say they're cool. The protagonists are always based on me, of course.
Oh, okay, so you're cool. All right.
So I'm cool. I have to tell my kids this. No, guess what? Um, so yeah, I think all my protagonists, when people criticize them, they say, oh, they're not likable. They're kind of weak. They get pushed around too easily. I'm like, yeah, that sounds about right. But
but,
no,
but but
no
but but don't
woman
piss you off though.
should
Don't tick
allow
you
herself.
off though.
But yeah. Um, but the other characters, I mean, sometimes they're based on people I know in real life. I look at the housemaid as kind of a bad boss story, at least the beginning of it. We've all had that awful boss, right? Who's
Mhm.
just so mean and terrible. I love terrible boss stories. So that was kind of the beginning of that. We've all had that experience. And it's just I kind of come up with characters that I think are fun to read about and situations that I think are super frustrating, that might come up in real life. And I think people like to read about that. They like to see, the protagonist get tortured and then see how they deal with it. I think that's something that's enjoyable. I like to read about it at least.
Yeah, I think that's been fun with this subgenre of these psychological thrillers because it's like regular people versus an FBI or police
Yeah.
detective.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going to write an FBI story. That's just not going to happen.
Do you think that's why they become so popular though, especially now? Is this because people it's like, hey, I can see myself in that situation.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with domestic thrillers. Like you put yourself in that situation. And I always write in the first person, and I try to write in a very conversational way. Like I actually dictate a lot of my writing. So I think that's why it sounds very conversational. It's literally me talking. And I think people like that. It's just, I describe my writing as like a friend telling you an especially juicy piece of gossip. And like, yes, I want to hear more of this.
And did you enjoy before you started writing these psychological thrillers? Did you enjoy the genre? Had you read them before?
Yeah, I think that's part of why I started writing them. So I've always loved thrillers. When I was a kid, I used to read, my favorites were Mary Higgins Clark. I love Robin Cook, medical thrillers. Who else? Michael Crichton. I've always loved to read. And I've kind of read thrillers on and off, and I love Gone Girl, of course. Who didn't? But then I read a book by an author named Shalini Boland. Have you heard of her?
No, I haven't. No.
She's an amazing British author, and it was a domestic thriller. I think it's called The Best Friend, and it was really well done in that, like, I remember waking up like in the middle of the night, mad at the characters in this book. Like I was so angry about what was happening in the book, and I kind of wanted to recreate that feeling of being so passionate about this could be happening to me, and this is so frustrating. Like I want to punch this character in the face. So that was kind of what inspired me to start writing domestic thrillers.
Well, you really hit that out of the park with the housemaid because I went through all those emotions.
Yes. I'm like, if you don't want to punch the character in the face, I have failed.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of curious just in case the listeners aren't too familiar with this genre. So like, what makes it what makes a thriller psychological?
Wow, that is a good question. I think I've never been asked that before. I think it's just like kind of mind twisting type of thing. Um like people, my mother sometimes reads my book and she's always like, this is horror. And I was like, it's not horror, it's a psychological thriller. But who knows what the difference is? Nobody really knows. So I'll just make something up now. It bends your brain maybe without like actually showing you something disgusting, like in a horror movie. Like in a horror movie, um, the person is being chopped into little pieces and they show every little detail of it. And then in a psychological thriller, the person is just in the room waiting to be chopped up, and you're kind of in their head and you're feeling like their fear, but there's no disgusting chopping up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah, actually it does. I'm here nodding in agreement.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, it kind of reminds like Alfred Hitchcock movies. They say he's a master of
Yes.
horror, but they're more like suspense and psychological, like Psycho and.
I love Alfred Hitchcock, and one of my books is like a tribute to his movies.
Ooh,
Do
which one?
not do not disturb. It's mostly a tribute to Psycho. It's about like a creepy motel, but it actually includes little details from Rear Window and also some episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents, which I used to love when I was younger. On Nick at Night, I think I used to watch it. So I'm a huge fan, and he does it so well. Real genius.
Yeah, I love those. Yeah, I remember those shows too. Watching that on cable, those the reruns of his TV shows, really good.
Yeah, and he's so funny too.
Yeah,
That little
yeah,
part.
his intros were so cool.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So kind of curious now too. Now, just getting into because as a writer, I get snoopy as to other writers' routines and all that. So I'm gonna get all snoopy here. So do you have like a set writing routine when you're working on something, or or do you just start to write? Do you have an outline? How does your process work?
Um, I'm pretty regimented, but not in the way that a lot of other writers are, because I do have another job. So I will wait for a time when I'm not too busy. So I'll wait for like either a vacation week or a week when, I know my schedule is really light. And before I get to that point, I plan all in my head. I don't write outlines, but I think. I'm always thinking, often in the shower, sometimes while walking, driving, and I'm constantly planning the story for maybe 2 months before I start writing. And then when I sit down, it's like a binge thing. I like write like a crazy person for like a couple weeks and then it's done. But it's like a whole process leading up to that. And then, of course, editing comes after. That takes forever.
Yeah. So also like when you start to write it, you already have the whole story bit like in your head. So it's just like getting it out of there on paper.
Yeah, it's in my head. I don't, yeah, some people do these very detailed outlines.
Yeah.
I don't like that because I plot them out, but I also like to let the characters take me where they want to. Like, because you don't know until you start writing. Like, I'm gonna really like this character. This one's gonna speak to me. You create some side character that suddenly you really like and you think that could be an important part of the story. Like you just don't know until you get down there. And I don't want to be tied down by some outline I wrote. So I do plan a lot, especially the twist.
Hmm.
I don't see how any, they talk about plotter versus pantser. I don't even see how a psychological thriller author could pants. Is that a verb? Pants?
I think it is not. Yeah, I think it's become one.
Yeah. So I don't see how you could pants because you have to set up this twist. The twist is super important, and if you don't know what it is going into it, it's very hard to set it up. But so I do have that before I start writing. I'm not going to go into that. Is the one thing that's important to me. I will not start writing until I've got a twist that this is the way I know it's a good twist. I tell it to my husband. I go through the whole story with him and I tell him the twist. And if he says, "Oh, that's pretty cool," or he laughs, that's another option. Then I'm like, okay, I can write this.
And do you usually go like for the like is it like one big twist or do you have like multiple twists or are you just looking for that one big one?
So I think it all really has to be one twist, but the twist can have components that sort of come together. Like they should all sort of, each part of it should fit together. But it's really all one, I think. But one could argue like there are many twists in a story. Actually, I would say The Housemaid Secret might have 2 twists. How about that?
All right, cool. Look forward to discovering those.
Yeah.
And so how do you balance like your physician? So you're like, that's a pretty big, busy day job. How do you balance the demands of writing with other aspects of your life?
It's hard. I mean, I also have 2 children.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I wish there were like 25 or 26 hours in the day. It can be challenging. And there are some times when I'm doing it well and other times when I am not doing it as well. But I try my best. I do work only part-time as a physician, so that helps. About 4.5 years ago, I went from more full-time to part-time. So that's given me a lot more time for my writing. I'm also the kind of person who always likes to be busy and doing 5 things at once. So, I do a lot of social media stuff and people will say, "How are you constantly doing this? Like, don't you have a job?" I'm like, well, I'm kind of doing it. I'm at a meeting and the meeting isn't that interesting. So I got my phone out. I'm like liking comments and stuff. And, nobody notices. I'm doing it under the table. I mean, no meetings are important. I'm just going to say that. I don't think I've ever been to a meeting in my life that was important. So I think it's okay.
Yeah, usually when you finish with one of those meetings, you're like, was this really necessary?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you know what? I don't say that anymore because I got a lot done on social media during this meeting. So thank you.
And you mentioned social media too, because I think I first started seeing your the housemaid popping up was on TikTok.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know much about TikTok. I mean, I've been there and I've seen it, but it's like, can you tell us a little bit about that
I don't
world?
know anything about TikTok.
Just that they love your book.
It just happened, and I wish I could say that like I had the magic TikTok formula, but I do not. I have an account. I think I know how to log in. I've watched a couple of videos. I have no idea how to record a video. I
Oh, she's not out there doing dancing and all that stuff.
I don't think you're ever going to see me dancing on TikTok. I'm sorry. That's just not it's not in my repertoire.
But did you when it started getting a lot of attention on there, how did that come? Do you notice that? Did you realize that? Like, what's going on over there?
Yeah, it was mostly told to me. Like somebody was like, you're really popular on TikTok. And I'm like, what's TikTok? No, I didn't know what TikTok was, but only vaguely. So I'm like, okay, I got to start an account so I can see what's going on TikTok. And I love that people on TikTok enjoy my book and that it's helped me. And I have no idea what to do with all that. Like I think I figured out Instagram. I figured out Facebook. I think I'm just too old for TikTok. And I appreciate that younger, savvier people are promoting me on there. I'm very appreciative, but I'm too old.
Well, that's good. Yeah, you have like a publicity team on there on TikTok working
Yeah,
for you. That's awesome.
I don't even have to pay them, I guess.
Yeah, they're giving many ideas.
Yeah. No, I'm very grateful
Yeah.
because I can't figure out how to do it. So
And so I'm kind of curious too now, like, do you said it sometimes it takes like a month or something to get the idea for your book. Do you write every day though? Do you set time to write every day?
I don't like I as I said, I'm a binge writer. I'll like write a lot. Like I could write 10,000 words in a day.
Oh wow.
Um, and I'll have it dictated, as I said. And then I can go like a couple of months without writing. And I like to write. I like to kind of share myself. So I do have a reader group. I called it on Facebook called Freida McFadden. I thought that was extremely clever when I came up with it. And I tell little stories about my life there, and that kind of satisfies my urge to tell little stories and to write a little bit every day. But I'm not doing, heavy duty storytelling each day. I just need a break. I just can't
Mhm.
like, I have another job. This needs to be fun for me. Like this needs to be something that's enjoyable. And if I had to do this every day, it would be a job. And I do not want that.
And how do you come up with? I know this is the kind of a boring question, but it's always fascinating to me. So, how do you decide on the titles for your books?
It's the hardest part because you can write like 80,000 words and that 2 or 3 word title, it's like impossible. Like, I don't know. Um, so I always have like kind of a working title in my head. And sometimes I'm very lucky and I can use it. And other times it doesn't work out. So 2 times recently, so with The Housemaid, I was writing it several years before it was published. And the working title in my head was The Maid. I thought that was a great title for it. And then a book came out by Nita Pruz called The
Mhm.
Maid, and it was very, very popular. So I was like, I guess I can't call my book that anymore. And so, I did the book with a company called Bookouture, and they came up with The Housemaid. And they're a British company. And I had never heard that word before. I was like, what is a housemaid? Like, is that like a cleaning person? I don't. I guess it's the same as a maid, but it's the British version. And
Oh, okay.
but it's not a word I would use. But I love the word. And that it totally suits the book. So I'm very happy with the housemaid.
Yeah, it
And
would be like the butler or something.
yeah, the but well, yeah, no, we don't have do they have butlers still in Britain? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, Mel probably like King Charles does probably.
Yeah, like there was like, do you remember Mr. Belvedere? He was a
Oh
butler.
yeah, absolutely. I'm a
Belvedere.
child of the '80s.
You're really telling my age now. Yeah, and then there was another book I did. It's called Never Lie, and the working title for that was The Therapist because it's about, a psychiatrist. And of course, B.A. Paris, I think it was, came out with a book called The Therapist right when I was finished writing it. So
The
couldn't use
conspiracy.
that. So I had to scramble and come up with another title. And people will sometimes say, I don't think this is the best title for your book. And I'm like, I'm sorry, someone else took my title.
Yeah,
So
yeah. You gotta be so now. You gotta come out faster now when you get your
I
titles.
know. I know. It's like I always get scooped. I don't know why. They're on my hard drive somehow, knowing what I'm writing.
Yeah, you mentioned bookature.
Bookouture. I might be saying that wrong.
Oh, I know. Me too.
It's
I always
possible.
butcher it, but I'm really impressed with the books that they put out. That they seem to really have hit the thriller world very nicely with their books.
Oh yeah, they have a lot of great authors on there. The one I mentioned, Shelley Boland, she's on there. And I know a lot of other authors. Another um, author I am friendly with, Daniel Hurst, who puts out some amazing books. He
Oh,
recently started,
yeah.
yeah, he recently started writing with them. They've got some great authors, and they've definitely they're very good to work with, very nice people, and my editor there gave me some great advice. I don't think the housemaid would have been as good without my editor Ellen. So very grateful to them for that.
Yeah, I met Daniel Hurst in Las Vegas this November at a writers' conference. He's a
Oh, that's
yeah, real
awesome.
nice
I've never
guy.
met
Yeah,
him, but we've
yeah,
chatted. He seems super nice.
yeah.
I love his books.
Hmm. Yeah, and so the first books you put out on your own, you were in indies. So what was the transition to working with a publishing house? Was,
It
was that for you? Was it all right?
It wasn't too bad. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was nice having a little bit of that professional guidance
Hmm.
on the manuscript. Usually I just use my own beta readers and editors. And it was different. You have to give up some of the control.
Hmm.
Each thing they then they gave me the blurb. I'm like, no, 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 no. I want it like this and this and this and this. And it's hard to um give up that control. Can you hear me? It says oh, never mind.
Oh yeah, no, I can hear you.
It suddenly said mute. Sorry.
Oh,
Um, so it was good to have a little bit more professional guidance. And I was worried about the cover. I was like, what if they give me a bad cover? What will I say? And then they showed me the cover, and I like almost cried. I was like, I
yeah,
love this cover. This is
your
the
covers
best
are awesome.
cover.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Their covers are for the books that they put out. I've always been very impressed with them.
Yeah, I love that like eye catching on my covers, the
Yeah.
blue and the yellow, and I love the new one too. I think it was the red and yellow,
Hmm.
a little bit McDonald's-ish, but I still love it.
Yeah. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Well, you got the whole McFadden, right? So you got to go with the.
Yeah, exactly. It totally fits. So
And so I'm kind of curious too about the. So you mentioned before how you think about the story in your head for a while. Do you do a lot of research for your books?
Google is my friend.
Hmm.
How did anyone write a book before Google?
Can you imagine? He's
That's my
got
question.
someone like
Um,
James Michener who does those huge books. How did he do it?
How I remember dating myself again. I remember going to libraries to do research for school projects and stuff, and it was awful. There was like this decimal thing that you had to know. I never figured it out. So I'm very glad that Google came along because I might have had to learn this decimal thing to use libraries. Yeah, so I Google everything, but I do other research too. I really try to make things very authentic when I can. I have this uh, book about the inmate, which is about a nurse practitioner in a prison. So I know, the nurse practitioner. I know what the medical part, I know, of course, but I had a friend set me up with a physician assistant who worked in a prison seeing patients, and we chatted and he told me about his experiences. And I also read a couple of books by people who, did medical work at prisons. So I really try to keep things accurate. And I know sometimes things are not accurate just because I have to take poetic license to make the plot work.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody will say, "Oh, this would have taken years and you made it take 2 months." I'm like, you didn't want to read 2 years of minutia. So just be happy that I changed it.
And
But
so,
yeah, Google for the most part. And, I hope that the police never get into my computer and check my internet history. I will also be in prison, perhaps.
or your husband gets a little nervous when he sees what you're looking at. And my wife sometimes is like, "What are you
Yeah.
looking at?" And I go, "That's research."
He's like, "What is that?"
Yeah. So what are you working on now? Do you have any current upcoming projects that you're working on for after the Hospice Secret?
Yeah, I actually have a book that I'm hoping to put out self-published in May-ish. I haven't set a date exactly. That is about a medical student, so drawing from my own experiences, who's spending the night on the psychiatric ward of a hospital. And this is very much based on experiences I had as a medical student about a while ago, let's just say. And, I had them in my head for a long time. And then I got the idea for the twist and I was like, I'm writing it. So, it's all written, just needs some editing work. And I want to, of course, give the housemaid a time to shine. So I'll probably be putting that out like late in the spring.
Wow, cool. Yeah, just that description sounded creep me out.
Thank you.
So I always like to before I let my guests go, I always like to ask, because I know I have aspiring writers that listen to this podcast. Any advice for an aspiring writer that's listening to this, a thriller writer?
Do you have another hour? There's a lot I could tell people. I feel like, I've just learned so much over the years. One thing I say, what's between the covers of your book is the most important part. Interesting writing is really crucial. Everybody's so focused on their cover and their Amazon page. And of course, it's super important. But what's most important is what is between those covers. And I always recommend to writers the book Save the Cat Writes a Novel. It's an excellent book about plotting, because I think that's where a lot of new writers go wrong. They don't know how, the trajectory of a book should be. So that book really helps you figure out like how to reach that climax, how to develop the characters. And it really just helps a lot for new writers. And I've had friends who read that book and they're like, "Oh, now I get it. Now I know what I've been doing wrong all this time." So I think it's an excellent book.
Yeah, I agree. I have that book too, and I've done some of her video courses. I can't Jessica Brody, I think, if I remember her name. Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we end the interview?
I just want to say thank you to all my readers. It's such an honor to have so many people reading my books. And I just want to give everyone a great experience. I love to read, and the thought of other people loving my books the way that I have loved other people's books, it blows my mind. And I just feel so lucky to be able to do this and to share my writing with people and for them to appreciate it. So I just want to say a big thank you to everyone.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Freida, for being on the podcast. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, it's great talking to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to Meet the Thriller Author. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with one of your favorite writers of mysteries and thrillers. Or if this episode's guest is new to you, I hope you give their books a chance. Helping listeners discover new authors and books is one of the coolest outcomes of doing this podcast. As always, you can head over to thrillerauthors.com to sign up to my Thrilling Reads email list. That way you won't miss out on any great deals in thriller and mystery books. You can also check out all the links and resources in the show notes for this episode over at thrillerauthors.com. And also please do subscribe to this podcast if you haven't done so already, and leave a rating and review wherever it is that you're listening to this show. If you have done that already, I thank you. I really do appreciate your support. For my other links to my author website, social media haunts, and more, check out thrillingreads.com/links. All my links will be on that page. So that's it for this episode. See you next time, and stay safe out there.